I want to tell you a story. Last week, my 3-year-old had a pretty gnarly bicycle accident, and she knocked out one of her front teeth and completely out. And then the other front tooth was left just dangling from a tiny thread of gum tissue. Over the next few days, my husband and I would check the tooth out, and it was getting grayer and grayer, and we would just look at each other in disbelief because we'd feel the tooth, and I did not know how it was still hanging on. Really, like, how in the world is this tooth hanging by a literal thread of gum tissue? We called the dentist, and even though my daughter was eating and talking and drinking and playing and everything just fine, we made an appointment to get the tooth extracted. The tooth, the dentist said, needed to be pulled. If left alone for too long, the dentist said, the tooth would inevitably become infected and it would cause more damage, for sure. To say my 3-year-old was not happy about this extraction would be the massive understatement of the year. She was terrified. As a parent too, holding her down in the dental chair, I felt horrible watching and listening and literally feeling her pain as they took the metal extraction instrument and yanked the tooth out of her mouth. I actually had to close my eyes. And of course, I did not want her to have to go through this extraction. The last thing I wanted was her to have to go through that. But I knew that if we had left the tooth alone, the tooth would have grown infected and caused way more damage to other areas of her mouth and possibly body. Although I was aware that it would be scary and painful for my daughter to get her tooth extracted, at the same time, as a parent, I recognized that the short-term trauma of pulling out that tooth was necessary in order to avoid the much longer-term inevitable damage and devastation that would come down the line if we had sat back and didn't do anything. We couldn't let the tooth rot. I share this story because it's a metaphor that might be able to help explain my answer to the question, the popular question, which is, what could have saved you as an alienated kid? The short answer: if someone had pulled out my rotten tooth. Hi, welcome back to the Anti-Alienation Project. My name is Maddie, and here I talk about everything related to a certain form of severe child psychological abuse that I went through for 20 years, known as parental alienation. What is parental alienation, you may ask? Well, this involves one parent, usually an angry parent, often during a custody dispute or a divorce, but not always, who manipulates and forces their child to reject their other loving parent without true justification. I mean, this is a parent who goes on a rampage, an obsessive rampage, to destroy the loving relationship between their child and their child's other parent. And this is what happened to me. When my parents' marriage went south, my mom began to manipulate me and use coercive control tactics to convince me that my dad was abusive, selfish, manipulative, and didn't love me. For the next 20 years, I rejected him without true justification. My dad loved me the whole time. I realized the truth about 2 years ago, and I've been speaking out about this form of abuse since last summer, trying to wake up other people who are still alienated from a parent, as well as trying to just get this form of abuse on the public's consciousness so that we can prevent it from happening in the first place. So I gotta say that there have been 2 of the most commonly asked questions that I've had since last summer. Number 1 would probably be, how did you figure it out? And I've made a few videos on that already. Go check them out if that's your number 1 question. But the number 2 question is something I haven't really made a video about yet. And that is, what could have saved you as an alienated child? Now, I just gotta add, I'm not an expert, I'm not a therapist or researcher, I'm just someone who lived through this for 20 years. My second disclaimer is that I do not speak or represent all alienated children. I'm just coming from my own experience. So in this video, I'm gonna say what could have saved me as an alienated child, and that does not apply to all alienated children. The only way that I would have been saved as an alienated child, someone would have needed to intervene. Someone would have needed to pull out that rotten tooth. In other words, someone would have needed to get me away from the abuse. Someone would have needed to get me away from the abuser. I know this might seem simplistic, and you're probably wondering, like, what would that look like? Well, what this would have looked like, or could have looked like for me, number one, I wish someone had reversed custody. I would have needed to live with my dad, or perhaps my dad's mom, my grandma. I trust her completely. Number two, I would have needed a no contact period from my mom. I would have needed to be separated from her, a rather long no contact period, at least a year, to break the extreme mental hold that she had over me. And number three, I would have needed to know from someone I trusted completely, which probably would have been my dad's mom, my grandma, the truth. The words that would have been used, what would have been explained to me, obviously would have been different based on what age I was. Depending on the age, going through every lie, every belief I had, and having it broken down by professionals and other people I would have trusted, I would have needed to be told the truth with evidence, with receipts, and most importantly, I know this is a long shot. I know this is a long shot for most alienators to ever get to the point of doing this, but it would have helped me tremendously if my mom would have said something along the lines of, I've made a mistake. It was wrong of me to tell you all these things about your dad. I was wrong. Your dad is not that person. Your dad loves you. I was wrong. I was wrong, and your dad does love you. I was being selfish. I'm sorry. Now, of course, these are the words that I wish that I would hear from her, and I probably never will. It's unfortunate that the alienator is the easiest one to break the spell for the kid. But those three things, reversal of custody, a no contact period, a long no contact period, and number three, for someone to explain to me and tell me the truth in detail at an age-appropriate level. Now, the question is, would all of this, the custody reversal, a no contact period, the deprogramming, would it have been traumatic for me as a kid, as an adolescent, as a teenager? Absolutely. Oh yes, it would have been traumatic. Just like my 3-year-old was screaming the night before, screaming the morning of, screaming while it was being pulled, screaming afterwards from the trauma of the pain. It would have been traumatic. Yes. At the same time, that pain would have been necessary to prevent and avoid the next 20 years of abuse, of more trauma and more abuse that has impacted me so severely. So here's the current situation we have with alienated children. If a parent physically abuses a child, they must be removed and protected. If a parent sexually abuses a child, they must be removed and protected. If a parent psychologically abuses a child, their child must continue to be abused. Also, no professionals will step in to tell the child what has happened to them or that it's wrong. Oh no. When it comes to psychological abuse, the child is not removed. When it comes to psychological abuse, the child is not protected. We need to start comparing psychological abuse to sexual and physical abuse in order to treat it properly because it is just as damaging. Why are we hiding from children, adolescents, and teenagers the mistreatment and fabricated reality that they're living in? Why is it okay to do that? If a child is going through sexual abuse, do professionals and parents figure it out and they do nothing? They allow it to continue. They don't tell the child it's wrong. So the child grows up to think that's normal. That's what would happen. The child would think that's normal. They would never figure it out and they would just continue to get abused. That is what we're doing with children who are being psychologically abused. They're not getting the help they so desperately need. I'm sorry I went off on a little tangent on this video, but that is what I needed in the shortest explanation I can give you. I would need that damn rotten tooth to be pulled out of my mouth. Severe alienators are abusers. These are abusive parents, and children deserve to live lives free of abuse. I will stand by that till the day I die. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed and got something helpful or insightful from it. Please give it a thumbs up to get it in the algorithm and leave a comment on what you think if you were an alienated child. I want to hear from you. What would have helped you? What would have saved you from the abuse? If you're a parent, what are your thoughts on this topic? Have you found success in helping your alienated child? I hope everybody's having a good day, a good week, and stay tuned for the next video.